Howdy there, folks, and welcome back to our campaign in Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. We have failed to conquer Maine, and we've failed to make America behave. They've won a few battles because on occasion I will hit autocalc, not to win overwhelmingly, but I like to add a little bit of chaos into my strategy games. I like there to be the opportunity for some of my commodores or fleet commanders to be absolutely fucked up and ruin things, and then I have to come in and try to fix them. It's very easy to micro everything in a turn-based game, especially when the overworld strategy element is turn-based. So I want to make sure that I'm giving myself a few disadvantages. Here and there, a little bit of chaos. Perhaps one of these battles would go better than I could achieve. Perhaps they will go far worse. But it's like having a fleet report on the far side of the world suddenly melting and ruining everything you do. Which is important. You need to make sure that you're not doing everything perfectly. That's boring. A little bit of chaos makes things interesting, don't you think? So, we are in a state where we are going to go broke unless I can curtail my spending. I know how. But I'm going to keep my spending as high as possible, as long as possible, in order to make my average fleet sailor a little bit more robust. I want to make sure that we're training our guys up, we're building our port facilities, and we're investing in the correct research. This is going to be very, very critical because from 1906 to about 1920, you see a lot of rapid innovation in naval warfare. You see the United States Navy lays the foundation for the big fleet problems. They start playing out. The IJN certainly comes into its own with the establishment of a lot of their fleet school. And, the U.S. wants to surrender. Well, that's interesting, but I don't think so. I said I would be interested in it possibly, but I don't think they're going to actually sign it until they get more advantage. So I'm going to send my destroyers down the road, and I have some of my other guys coming around the Cape the long way. The Americans are in the Mediterranean, and that's fine because I may have a chance at intercepting a squadron or two off Majorca. And losing any of these surface combatants is certainly doable as they are older destroyers. The older, shorter range stuff is definitely a lot more attritionable. I don't mind losing them. I just nod and I'm like, oh no, I lost them. Oh. So let's see what happens, because if I can deliver a few more blows, knock out some more of the American fleet, I could certainly get them more to the table. The problem is the antebellum, the after war, is going to be very expensive. This is one of those states where you build up for a war and then you have to float the bill. That's why you see after a war, so many great and noble ships get cut into razor blades. It's an unavoidable part of naval shipbuilding, and typically you want to cut apart the older stuff. You don't want to get rid of your new things. Oh, and they did surrender. Wow. You know what? Choices. Give me Alaska. Italian Alaska is a thing now. Now I'm going to be broke. So we need to take all of our destroyers, and I'm going to try to move these fuckers to Sardinia, which is not a bad place for some of them. Okay, what do we got? Yep, we're going to move these to Sardinia. Now, they don't have great port facilities. They have okay port facilities, which will be fine for the most part for my destroyer fleet. Now, this is a fairly big destroyer fleet. I have to look at what do we have. Yeah, we really don't have the facilities out here to do what we need. So I'm going to have you guys... Oh, all right. I'm going to have you guys move back to Mali. Yeah, because you guys barely left that port. I'm going to have you guys go up to Cyprus. And then I will put another one of the squadrons, these 11 guys. I'm going to have these guys go to Catania there. And then we are going to do what we can by getting our battleship squadron, which is probably going to have to get split up. I'm going to send that back in to where it needs to be. I'm going to put the rest of the destroyers in Taranto, so if the Austro-Hungarians decide to get uppity, I can go in there and stromboli their meatballs, because that's the Aegean Sea and Ionian Sea. It's very small, and if I start hearing those fucking accordions, I can just go in there and beat the shit out of them. I'm going to get some angry comments from people in the Balkans. They're going to say, we don't all play into the former Yugoslavia meme. And I'm like, I know, but we have to make fun of everyone equally. That way the whole room is laughing. Okay, we've developed TNT, which means we're getting into phenol production. So that's good. Making sure all my ships are moving. Where are you? You are a lot of destroyers. You need to move to Taranto. I'm going to have you guys move there. That's a pretty good anchorage. And then we are going to get into our fleet, and we are going to go through the Exporto. Those 2 ships are very, very fancy. So we're going to go through our whole group, and we're going to say, hey, everything in port is going to be limited. The cheapo class can probably go, because I don't even have a design for it anymore, so it is functionally obsolete. I'm going to wait until it's in port. Then I have to go down to my finances, and I need to lower my naval training a lot. And while our transport capacity is good, our tech budget isn't. So I need to lower that by a considerable amount, which is going to be tragic. But I'm going to be scrapping some of the older ships. I will save some of the money. Do not worry. Moving all these ships is very expensive. Once they're all back at port, I will then be able to tailor my expenditures accordingly. But hey, we control southern Alaska. How cool is that? So I can then go station some of my destroyers, or I can even build a destroyer fleet for southern Alaska. So if I want to, I can then harass the American Pacific Fleet from there. I can make a play for large parts of the Pacific. I could probably even fuck with the Russians. But these are limited anchorages, and southern Alaska being what it is, I'm not going to be able to build heavy ships there without significant investment in RSO and shipyard facilities. And whenever you hear someone say RSO, what they mean is repair, service, overhaul. Any of my ship bunkering facilities, ship-to-shore facilities, shore-to-ship facilities, anything that is helping boats stay in the water and helping boats do their job. So anything that can fuel them, fix them, or tell them to get fucked, more or less. Oh, wow. A military confrontation with the United States becomes possible. All right. I'm not going to pay him off. I'm just going to say, like, yeah, give me a little bit more naval budget. That'll be fine. I just think it's hilarious that they just lost a war and they're already banging their drum again. But, you know, who cares? I'm going to slowly try to improve things with France and a few other countries that I lack the good treatment with. They're probably a little bit upsetty in the spaghetti. And I'm going to make sure that my guys get back to port. And I'm hoping they get back to port soon enough, because this shit's expensive. However, as some of them are back to port, I can then increase my funding. I know, we're running out. It's also because we're building battleships. Battleships are goddamn expensive. There's a reason why you typically only build them in this era when you are fighting another nation that is also doing this. This is why you have an era in shipbuilding called the Dreadnought Race, where everyone is building fuckloads of these. There's a famous quote by Churchill where they say that, you know, the economists wanted 4 and the Navy wanted 6, and they compromised on 8. That's not a lie. Paranoia and progress go hand in hand in naval shipbuilding doctrine at this time. Everyone goes, well, these guys are building this many, these guys are building this many, these guys are building this many. And if you look at any of the naval shipyards of that era, whether it's Armstrong Vickers Whitworth or even the American yards where they were building shipyards for South America, where they built the Minas Gerais and the Rivadavia, you'll find that a lot of nations got into this business, whether for their own protection or for defense. You'll find a lot of people get into this notion that if you don't have dreadnoughts, you are essentially saying it's okay to get fucked. And nobody wants to be that person. Nobody wants to have their whole navy disappear. Nobody wants to have their primacy become a question. People typically want to be a powerful nation. People typically want to have some rulership. And everyone was really buying in, at this point in history, into the work of man and the work of, well, by now, Fred T. Jane, where they start getting into this idea of primacy of rulership of the sea. However, it was the First World War where you find the biggest naval battle of that war, Jetland, where the two big fleets of, your two chief belligerents, and I know some people will take offense by saying that, don't you mean other chief belligerents? And I'm like, no, you have the UK and you have the Imperial German state having a throwdown up here, right off Denmark. And it's largely inconclusive. You don't find a absolute outcome other than the German fleet stays at home. And yes, this is my interpretation of Jetland. You will find a lot of people who have very, very differing interpretations of Jetland. I have met military historians who say it was a decisive battle with a decisive outcome. Some people will say it was an indecisive battle with a decisive strategic outcome. They will look at it in different ways. What does happen is the two fleets throw down. The German fleet stays home for the rest of the war. The British fleet is then free to go do whatever it wants. Some people will say that is, of course, a strategic victory, at least for the Royal Navy. Some people will say it's not what Fisher intended, Lord Jackie Fisher, where, you break the back and absolutely annihilate the German Navy so that you can do whatever you want, which they kind of largely did. The blockade of, German ports effectively diminishes the German ability to wage war. But it's not the decisive battle everyone was hoping for. Both sides wanted this moment of cataclysm where everyone looks up and goes, wow, we won, or wow, we lost decisively. So much of the German Navy is relatively intact that by the end of the war, German leadership suggested a last-minute crazy Hail Mary of running all the ships out and damming the high seas fleet and then dying gloriously on an assault on London and the British coasts. And the people in the German Navy felt so offended at that, they decided to have themselves a rebellion. And that rebellion is actually what caused the Kaiser to abdicate and flee the country. All right, so we got into some colonial conquest. Looks like the Cook Islands. The Cook Islands are threatening to... Good God. All the way over there? I mean, I control Italian Anchorage, but as you can see, not a great port. I thought I could scroll the map over to the right and reach it, but no, I have to go all the way to the left. Looks like the Cook Islands are supporting terrorism. I don't even know what that means. So we're just gonna have to assume that they mean we need to act in some way, because our guy on the map in Italy was like, I want that, right? He said, I want that. I want that, and you need to make it happen. I'm like, whatever. So I'm also going to need to break up our forces, our battleship fleet, because it is mighty and large. And this is very critical to make sure it's all going to different ports. Otherwise, the shipyards will all fill up. Now, it says I need to respond to the Cook Islands in a number of turns. There is no way in hell I'm going to be able to achieve this. So I'm just going to say no. And I'll probably leave Italian Anchorage alone for now because I can't afford to build a navy out there. The anchorage is also too tiny, so anything I put out there, I could build a ship. Or I could build maybe 10 destroyers, but I'd have to limit their tonnage. And even then, if I got into a fight, that dockyard's going to fill up really quick with broken stuff. That being said, it looks like we're repairing a lot of our battleships. They're finally coming home from campaign. I can get rid of some of the oldest ones, except for Exporto. Those ones I am keeping, hands down. Those things are sexy. We're going to keep them. And then, let's see, how many more do we have left to move? All right, Palermo, Messina. That's actually really good anchorage. All right, let's move Exporto and a few of these guys there. And then I'll take what's... Oh, yeah, those guys are moving. And then we will slowly adjust our navy and hope to put enough of our navy in various places to where when the next war kicks off, which, believe me, when you're a world power, trouble will find you sooner or later. They'll just come up to you and be like, I hear you like trouble, and you go, please, I do not desire it, and they will visit it upon you one way or another. This is just the status of global affairs. All right, how much anchorage do I have left over? I have a lot left over in La Spezia. Okay, let's put you guys up there. Good enough. Good enough. So next turn, I should have an honest accounting of my navy in terms of how many ships I got versus how many I can operate. I'm going to have to put them in limited, and then I'm going to have to get back under the hood, and then I will have to see what I can build for the next war. Anything too old, too antiquated, too slow, too short a range, or unmodifiable will have to go. That's okay. Anything I technically can upgrade, I probably should, but it's probably wisest at this point to build some dedicated dreadnought hulls and a few other ship classes. I do have some interim dreadnoughts that are quite terrible, and that's fine for now, but not really. All right, so let's get into who hates us. Japan, I'm going to improve relations with you just because I can. I think the Spanish are going to be my next problem. Let's go ahead and increase this, increase that. Let's put a little bit of research into new engines so we can start to get into turbines. Turbines are neat and interesting and will allow us to do many nice things. Okay, let's get into our fleet, and let's see. Exporto, no. The cheapo class needs to go. Let's scrap you guys. The fancy destroyer is fine. The austerity battleships, these are all right, but not great. So I'm going to get rid of you. The Exporto was actually better in every way. Let's see. And then the wide toms are definitely already there. And Sforza will be ready in 5 months, which is going to be fine. And I'm going to just put them at limited. We also have Exporto and Stella Maris. Those two are the ones that are going to be all right. So we have a little bit of overage, but not a lot. I can increase our tech budget to where it needs to be. And in 4 months, I'll have engines sufficient to actually design a new variation of ship. However, the fancy destroyer makes up the bulk of our destroyer squadrons. So as soon as I get turbines, I'm going to install those on them. I'm also going to overhaul their torpedoes, fire control, probably upgrade their armor. It's going to be ruinously expensive. And the reason I point out that battleships are absolutely apocalyptically expensive is because overhauling them requires you to do everything you would do if you're overhauling a car. You have to take all the panels off, you have to take all the bits out, you have to rewire them, replumb them, everything else. You would, like, think about a frame-off car restoration. Now imagine that car weighs 30,000 displaced tons. And so you're looking at something that is just a pile of metal. It is a skyscraper of metal. And you need to slowly go through, and you need to remove every rivet, every joint, break every seam, put all new pipe in there. You have to put new boilers, new turbine blades, new everything. Miles and miles and miles of cable. And just think about a house that's 30 years old. Think about a house that's 30 years old and you do a renovation on that house and you need to bring everything up to code. The breakers, the fuses, and everything else. On a battleship, you have to do the same thing. And some of these things might live 50, 60 years, so it's a lot of maintenance. Oh wow, tax income is booming. I'm going to let the GDP rise, and I'm going to take the cash out. I'm just going to double down. And I'm going to try to make our economy grow, because the economy is on what we rely when things go bad. We need the economy line go up between wars. We need the economy to be our pal. Okay, 3 months I'll have that. Internals protection. We're starting to get into, we're doing good. We're starting to get into advanced damage control, which is typically where navies distinguish themselves or become a watchword in them books, where people look at them and go, oh, you didn't do so well for yourself. And the answer is correct. Correct, you did not. All right. Starting to get better at ship repairs. Still selling destroyers like crazy, even though they're the older destroyers. I'm going to play a very careful game of trying to improve relations with people. I don't want to fight the U.S. again so soon. Our shipbuilding capacity is increasing, which is very nice. I'm going to try to advance our boiler technology, because once you get fancier boilers, you can actually boil water better. Yes, I know all of humanity's technology is boiling waters. That's fine. But once our new battleships are in, I can get rid of everything other than the Exporto, which is fantastic. The Wide Tom is going to be a nice billy club I can use on people. And hopefully I should have some new hull designs. I'm hoping to build essentially a 3/4 scale fast battleship for the Mediterranean. I'm going to try to jump the shark as well and get access to battlecruiser hulls faster. Battlecruisers will allow me to rapidly respond to a lot of things globally, and that way I don't have to be scared as much. That's my theory, at least. Let's make the Imperial Germans happy, shall we? And let's see if we can't improve our gun layout. Looks like we're about to get into steam turbines, and then after that we'll get into geared turbines. We're slowly getting into submarine experiments, and if you want to look into submarine stuff early, you have to look into a guy named Mr. Holland, who designed a bunch of submarines for the U.S. Navy. Holland's submarines are the first practical modern submarines that you think of, where you have an engine that you run on the surface, then you switch over to electrics, use batteries, and then dive. And his submarines of the era were absolutely fascinatingly well made for what they are. They're all handmade submarines. And this guy was just ahead of the curve and said, this is the future. Now, were his submarines flawless? No. But they trained navies in what they could be. They showed people what a submarine can do. It took things from theory to reality. And that's where things get really interesting. When you go from theory to reality, when you take something that is a dream and you make it real. So the Wide Toms are very big dreadnoughts, but I also have a handful of these Sforzas that are going to be done, which will be nice. And then I have 2 Exportos, but they're still fixing that one that took a clobbering. So let's get into our ship design here and design a new generation of destroyer. This is the Fancy. And as we can see, it's all right. It's not the best. It's certainly not the worst, but it could be better. So let's put turbines on it, auxiliary engines to help pump stuff off, and plus power management. Better Krupp armor, which does make it a fair bit lighter. It's got anti-flood measures, which means it can stay afloat longer. We're going to move into more stable picric acid. We're not going to get into crazy picric acid. This thing's actually going to also have this magical technology, all right? And this technology is truly magical. It's called a radio. I'm also going to remove the rear gun because we didn't really need to, and I'm going to put more torpedoes on there. Now, a radio will allow this thing to serve as a fleet outrider, and a fleet outrider is absolutely necessary. This lets your enemy know that you can see him, you have fun little escorts, and they're also dangerous. I'm also going to add 7/10 of an inch of armor all the way around. The idea is to make this a little tougher. I'm also going to increase the caliber and the diameter of the gun, and we're going to build a slightly meatier destroyer, right? And so this is our Mark II, and I will give spacious quarters for these things. These are going to be really nice. Now, this is a 107-man destroyer, which is a pretty big destroyer by this time period. But by World War II, you'll find the manning of destroyers is insane. They start to get really high manning because there's no such thing as automation in ships like they have today. If you go look at the modern corvettes, for example, being suggested for the Japanese Navy or Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Forces, you'll find things like the Mogami, where it's like 75, 80 crew, and that's it. These things have a really terribly good automation. A lot of these modern ships can deal with far fewer people on board, which increases their endurance, and it also makes your chances of losing everything a lot less. I do mean a significant amount less in every which way. So it's kind of important to keep these ship designs in mind. Stuff like OPVs and what have you, offshore patrol vessels, which are like a Coast Guard plus option for a Navy. OPVs can have crews as light as 30, 40 dudes for 2 to 3 weeks of operations, which is pretty cool. So a lot of modern ships are fairly light in terms of manning requirements, at least the stuff that's not capital N scale. All right, so the Fancy should be ready in 2 months. Then we will have the Sforza class, and those are all going to be at Taranto, which is quite nice. The Wide Tom and the Fama, the 2 of the Wide Tom class are already built. And we shall have, right now our fleet is only 3 warships. So anyone who looks at our Navy right now is going to go, Italy has decommissioned its whole fleet. No, they're all just being worked on simultaneously. Our dockyards are very busy, and contracts are probably full of graft, and graft. There, I said the line. You may drink.
When we build up, I know I'm gonna be the best warship was built for you. When we set out, I know I'm gonna be the best warship that sails for you. When we spot them, I know I'm gonna be the best warship that will take point. And if we take heat, I know I'm gonna be the best warship to take that heat. Oh, I would block 800 rounds, and I could block 800 more just to be the ship that took 1,600 rounds and sunk them down below. When we're working, I know I'm gonna be the warship working hard for you. And when the fleet comes, I know I'm gonna block every round they ever throw. When we take heat, you know I'm gonna be the ship that comes down to save you. And if they sink me, well, you know I'm gonna be the ship that takes one more with me. 'Cause I would block 800 rounds, and I could block 800 more just to be the ship that took 1,600 rounds before